Hey everybody, welcome to the Sort of Okay show about horses with Buck and Kyle. I'm obviously Kyle, the better looking and smarter one.
Exactly, that's why this is take 15. Anyway, keep going, Kyle. You've gone good so far.
We're gonna knock this out of the park. So we're not doing a show today about a particular competition. We've got a couple of things we're gonna review. But what we're going to do is it's a little bit interactive with you guys. We're going to try and do a little more of this, and we're answering a couple questions that have come in. We picked two, basically, that have come in, and we really appreciate the fan mail and all the positive response we're getting. But obviously, trying to get all the questions answered is a little bit of a challenge. So we picked two to highlight tonight, and then at the end, we're going to do a little discussion on a couple of competitions coming up, the ACs next week, Burghley, and some cool announcements for the Fantasy Equestrian Team League thing. This stuff's getting kind of interesting, and I think you guys are going to want to really participate in this next batch that's going on. So, one of the questions, the first one we're going to cover tonight from the fans is, and we've had this from several different people, is after 4-star, what is the plan afterwards? What downtime? How do you bring them back into work? And I think that we decided the best way to answer this was particularly right now, discussing sort of the horses that just went to the Rio and the Olympics. And then I think we'd probably do that and then pick, how we'd come back from Rolex, so you can kind of see a little bit of the difference in what you might do with a horse, and also the fact that Buck doesn't know what he's doing. So my plan, bringing them back after Rolex, is obviously much superior because it'll be different.
Exactly. Well, usually after Rolex, you might have to give yours a lot longer break than mine have to get, So anyway, but after these 4-star events, I think a lot for me depends on the particular horse, the age of the horse, how hard the competition was on the horse. And generally, I don't even start to make a plan for them until they come back to work. I think it's really important that you give them all the time that they need, and in some cases, the horses actually need less time. I think the older they get, the less time I give them off, just because I think it's better for them to stay fit and stay strong. And if they tend to be sort of horses that are hard to get fit, I would give them less time off, and horses that get fit easier, I would give them a bit more time. But generally, certainly in the spring, they would get maybe a couple of weeks, 2-3 weeks off. And then, in the fall, after whatever their big competition is, I would give them, I pull off their shoes and I put them in the field. And, after probably a week or so of making sure they're fine and all that stuff, I would pull their shoes off and let them go out. My horses don't go out with other horses on a regular basis once they get shoes, but during their off time, I pull up their shoes and let them go out with their buddies and let them, get furry and dirty and muddy and enjoy life. But I think the biggest thing for me anyway, is not really having such a plan as far as, okay, they have to do this event, because I think sometimes you start to make plans before you know how the horse is. And as they say, if you don't listen to them, they'll end up telling you anyway. So get them back into their routine, and then start to make plans going forward.
Well, and I think it is absolutely, you couldn't be more accurate with that idea of what horse it is and what type of horse it is. The older horses do tend to get fitter easier, but what happens is, like most people who get old, it takes longer to get the muscles back active and keep the muscle quality up. So the older horse, like I had to give Parker a little more time off after Rolex this year at 18. And I mean, it actually cost me probably a fall season, because he is fine right now, but it's not, his muscling actually deteriorated much more than I would have expected. And I sort of miscalculated that, but then I'm in a point where I can make that decision. I'm not in a rush. It's not like I'm like, oh my God, I've got to get him out. So it's nothing to me to say, you know what, I'll just build him up through the fall. But that's a little bit of a special situation. I think the problem is that with what Buck's saying is, he's talking about feel and history, and he knows his horses, and he absolutely he can pinpoint what one might need and what might work for one and not another one, because he has so much experience doing it. And I think with that, it really helps. I know for me, I will often refer to a bunch of different people with my horses and say, watch them at that first horse trial. Tell me what you thought of them. And I discuss it back and forth with Jen, because sometimes as a competitor, you get it in your head that things are a certain way and you miss on it one way or another. Like I've been in the situation where I was like, I need to give them this huge block of time, and it wasn't the right thing or necessary. And then I've had the opposite as well. And so I think outside input for a lot of people is huge. My kids that do 3 stars or 4 stars, we have to back them around, and I'm pretty involved with telling them how I feel that the program should go, because they usually are not lacking the experience with the horse, but they're lacking the experience at that level. And so it's a little bit unique for Buck, because he has so many horses, he's been there so many times, that he can really evaluate them off of what he's sitting on. But I will say I prefer to, at the fall, I agree, I throw mine out. They still stay on a somewhat of a schedule, but they back right off. I don't do the group turnout because I find when I switch things around, I always end up with one getting kicked, even if it doesn't have shoes on, and then they get, the wrong thing happens, and it frustrates me too much. So we've got enough paddocks that we can do a lot more turnout with individual or 2 in a paddock. But I think in the fall, as opposed to the spring, you always have that much more time where you've got them show jumping for January, mid-January, or even horse trials late January. So you can afford to give them that time off. In the middle of the, at the end of Rolex, let's say, when you look at your next plan for the fall, like Burghley's next week, so you would want to have your horse, if you're going to Burghley, out having competed probably 2-3 times by the time it gets to Burghley, which really negates the amount of time you can give them off ideally, which isn't the worst thing in the world either, because sometimes keeping them at that level, it's a little bit like when we ourselves are athletes and we're doing something. I know when I've run a marathon, if I keep going afterwards, I stay much healthier than when I give myself a huge break and then try and bring myself back up. It's always a struggle coming back up into heavy work.
Yeah, no question. And it's I think the spring 3-day and the fall 3-day are kind of, you treat them almost completely differently. For me, after they have their fall 4-star or whatever, they get the long break, and I would take a lot longer than probably most people to bring them back. And like for instance, Reggie, who did his first sort of team thing at 7, he did, test event in Hong Kong at 7. He was the backup for the Olympics as an 8-year-old. He did, I think he did Burghley as a 9-year-old. He did the World Games as a 10-year-old. So those things all ended in the summer. And so I think for, a part of his longevity was that he was able to, usually be done by the end of August. And I was able to give him a good long time, but I actually bring him back by the 1st of November and start trotting him, where a lot of the horses were just going out on break. Like he never ever did Fair Hill. And, and then, so I would have November, December, January, where I would just hack and trot and, start cantering. But I would usually go to that first event. Usually I would do an intermediate at the end of January, and, I might have had a little cross country school, like jump in the water or something like that, just to make sure he would jump. But I wouldn't really have much of a jump school per se. I'd maybe pop him over a few fences just for the heck of it, and get through that first event, and then kind of see where I am, and then sort of put the training part on sort of from the beginning of February, and sort of try to polish it all the way up until the big 4-star in the spring. And I think that's, for me, that's kind of worked fairly well, is do the long, slow, boring stuff and get them fit early. And then as you're going into the competitions, I think you want to back off the fitness and put on the finishing touches as far as the dressage, the show jumping, cross country, or whatever. And but for me, the big thing about training horses is that you just let them tell you what you're going to do. And, certainly, a non-thoroughbred horse like a Reggie or, a Copper Beach or something like that will be trained completely differently than a Park Trader or a Petit Flower, who are thoroughbred horses. And, maybe don't need as much fitness work, but they need a little bit more training work. So, I still wouldn't start the actual training part until the muscles were strong enough after the long break at the spring, in the fall. But then in the spring, after their 3-day, a lot of times I would just give them a week, maybe 2 weeks, and then go back to sort of light hacking and then back to training again, as long as they're fine.
Well, so with mine, if they have a long break, they all do the same sort of start back, which is they do 6 weeks of road work. We have a walker, but and we do use it a lot. But in that point, we're usually on them, having them hack out. So they start sort of a 30, 35-minute build up to an hour of hacking with 15 minutes of trot in it over a 6-week period. And the reason I do that is that way I always have a very consistent gauge on what I've done with the horses. And that way at the end of that 6-week period, I feel like they can start their flat work, increase their trot, and spend another probably 3-4 weeks just getting them up to, say, prelim training level horse trial fit with all the components put in there. And I think the big thing for me is that base work, the stuff that works their legs. It's not about their heart and lungs. It's just about getting that real strength in there. But that's going to be for the horses that have a long period of time off. Like that'll be how Parker, he's starting to hack, I think, next week. And that'll be sort of the way he'll come back in, because he's not going to make it to anything this fall. So I can afford the luxury of not rushing. When I came out of Jersey this year, it's not a 4-star, but I gave mine, I think, 2 weeks off. With 2 weeks, I don't feel like, for 2 weeks, you're not going to lose any fitness in a week. In 2 weeks, you're not going to lose a lot. So then you can kind of just step into not, exceedingly hard work the first 2 weeks. We can step right into the schooling and the activity. And it really does come down to so many things, like how they are coming out of it, how they're bred, and what their history is. Mine, the Trust Fund horse, is only doing horse trials this fall, even though he did only a 3-star this year, because I feel like he's going to be better served long term to really finish that strength work that he's been building on over the last couple of years. But it's a homebred horse; it never raced. Those sorts of things come into play, and I think this next little bit of using these competitions to just solidify him for next year is going to hopefully pay off huge when he comes out through the 3 days next year. But you have these plans, and then you sometimes have to change them around the further you go.
And what have you done? What have you changed in your training and bringing horses back from maybe, say, 10 years ago or 15 years ago, or I was watching a video of 6 years ago at Richland, and how it was so different, even the courses 6 years ago. And have you done anything different as far as bringing horses back then, hopefully as we get older, we get smarter, right?
We do now. We do a lot of water work. I actually did a lot of therapy work in our water jump trotting and stuff, because I think the resistance training is great for them there. So it's funny because we actually right now are building huge, enormous, about probably 15 stride canter circle that is going to be able to be raised. Water will be in the bottom of it, so it'll be a water jump most of the time. We'll be able to raise the water up to sort of mid forearm height. I don't want to go higher than that. You're going to be able to ride them in there. So they'll walk and trot in that for the resistance training, and then we'll lower it down to sort of a 4 or 5 inch depth for basically strengthening the forearm muscles for when they're getting ready to gallop, let's say at Fair Hill, that sort of thing. Because we don't have a lot of hills available to us. I do a lot of variety stuff. We have a bowl here that we can ride in. The footing's really good. It's basically a giant ring that's in a hollow, and you can I think you do a lot. Like we do twice a week, once a week in there, twice a week of flat work, because that probably increases their heart rate another 20 to 40 heartbeat. So we do a lot of stuff like that, and that's changed. The water stuff is something we've done a lot of recently, and then to the point where I believe enough in it that we're putting in And it is an enormous undertaking because we've been doing it for about 3 months now, kind of trying to get it just right. But when it's done, we're going to be able to monitor their heart rate in the water jump. We're going to have a rider on top of them so that they're going to still be carrying someone. They won't be pulling their neck up. They'll have to work themselves correctly. And I'm really excited about doing that. And it is, I think, going to strengthen the horses better, as well as work the appropriate muscles better. And so, when you watch them trot in water, they always flex the hocks so much, and there's so much different in their activity. And so we're kind of incorporating some of that in there, but you do have to start them very slow on that process, because you take them, you can exhaust them, and horses will try really hard for you, and they'll try themselves until they hurt. So
interesting, because we do that in the summer in Unionville, like before they cut the grass, and just it's the same exercise. It makes them trot them in tall grass, and the grass being tall, touching their belly, picks their belly up, and strengthens their top line, and strengthens their hind legs, and it's good. It's good exercise for them.
Yeah, we used to do it a lot in the snow up north, not because of intention, but because I didn't own an indoor, and I'd have to do all my work up there before I'd come south. So we'd spend 6-8 weeks at 30 below, and I kid you not, 30 below. Doing walking and then a little bit of trotting stuff, and that same action, I was always like, oh my God, this is great. But I didn't realize the real value in it because I was probably too young to get that. So I'm excited. It was horrible. I mean, like, we'd have a horse on either side ponying it. We dress up far more than we ever did going skiing, because you're sitting there just freezing for 45 minutes because there's no blood going through. Your feet go numb. It's awful. That's why I live in Florida.
What do you put on the horses? Do you wear blankets and stuff?
Yeah, we'd hack them in blankets when it was that cold. We can't do intense work at that sort of temperature because it affects their lungs. But you can do all the base work with them, and it is great for their legs and muscles, and the top line, like you're talking about. They just come out of it in such a better shape.
And if they have any swelling, then it's for real.
Exactly. That was the only downside, is they don't look great. Come down the south, all of a sudden they get in the heat and your legs go all puffy.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
Oh, man, that's awesome. Anyway, I advise nobody to ride in 30 below.
Yeah, I don't advise it anymore either. But back then I was I was sure I was going to make it. Now I realize I'm never going to make it, and so I want to be a little more comfortable.
There you go. You're getting smarter.
Exactly. So what I've changed is I don't work as hard. So we got some cool announcement. We got a cool announcement here with the Fantasy Equestrian Team competition coming up next week. This is getting really pretty cool. So the one is a combination between Burghley and Poe, and you have to pick riders from both of them to win. And what you win is another mini iPad with Michael Young's signature on the cover, which apparently this guy, I hear that he's a good rider and that he might have some success in the future, but so far all he's managed to do is win the Grand Slam, Badminton, Burghley, Rolex, a couple times at Rolex, and a couple Olympic medals and a World Championships and the Europeans. So he's really not, his future is bright. So this could be worth something to you at some point. What do you think?
He applied to be a working student with you, but you wouldn't take him in.
No.
So, yeah. So
anyway. Those Germans just don't know how to work hard enough.
Exactly.
So that's the Burghley Poe competition, which is going to be really fun. You also get this. It's not enough that you win the mini iPod. Apparently, they're giving away a .2 air vest as well. So.
iPad, not iPod.
iPad. And let me tell you, I'm going to be playing because I'm going to try and win some of this stuff.
It would be awesome if you could actually win something.
It would be awesome. I still beat you in all of our picks, buddy.
You have to wear the pink hat, don't you, at the AECs?
No, you have to. You've got so many built up on you. You have to wear it like 3 times. We'll do the calculation. You'll be wearing the pink hat there because it's in my trailer.
I'm pretty sure. I know I won the last event.
That's the problem with all the concussions you've had, is you think you've won everything.
I know that.
Young.
I know that I definitely won the last event, and I can't remember what it was, but I'm pretty sure I've won. I only lost once. I'm pretty sure, and that was that's sort of debatable, and it is under protest right now.
It is under protest. Okay, you're just like a soccer player. But then we're going to do a really cool one. I really want you guys to participate in this because we came up with it just before this show, and we approached a fantasy equestrian team to put it together. So they're going to do it for us. We're going to go with the ACs, and we're going to pick 2 divisions at the AC. We're going to pick the advanced division, obviously, but we're also going to pick the novice division as well. So we're going to combine those 2. We're going to pick the advanced division with 3 riders or 2 riders, and the novice division with 2 riders. We combine those teams. We all play for it. So you might be able to actually bet on your friends, your students, people that you know at the events, maybe yourself even. So put your money where your mouth is and get on that and put that out there for the competition. I think it's going to be that one's going to be really fun because it brings it right to our personal level.
Just don't bet on Kyle. That's kind of
the
only thing. And you'll see him out there with the pink hat.
No, you won't, because Buck's going to have it all weekend.
He's been doing a lot of losing lately. I am pretty sure I might have lost 1, but I think we might have tied, actually. So all the rest of them, I'm sorry. I'm the winner.
All it says to everybody is Buck's afraid of pink, okay?
Buck's not afraid of pink, but I don't want to make it pink and brown or something if I hit the floor or whatever, you know.
Pink and green, because they've got good grass there at Tryon.
Yeah, that's true.
All day long.
It'll make Kyle feel better if I wear it once. So I'll do that.
3 times. All right. So you guys, please join in and compete on the fantasy equestrian team. I'm really excited about that, both of those. 1, because of all the prizes, and 2, because I think it's going to be fun to do a novice division alongside the advanced division. I think that's going to be really cool. And there's a ton of people in that novice division. I don't even know how I'm going to figure out how to select. So join that up, and thanks for coming in on the show, and we hope you enjoyed it, these 2 episodes.
Thanks, guys.